Hello, everyone, again. Thank you for coming back. This is episode 58 and part two of this fascinating conversation with ufologist Norio Hayakawa. Norio, thank you again for your time. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Bret, for having me on your very interesting and important program about this strange phenomena that we call the UFO phenomena or UAP
Right.
phenomena.
Yeah, just a little sidebar. I still can't get over the UAP thing. I'm just a UFO guy, and the UAP thing just smacks to me like someone's trying to change the narrative somehow. And I don't trust it. Maybe I'm overly skeptical. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it. But that's just,
I
you
agree
know,
with you. I think I still like using UFOs because
yeah.
that's what it is.
That's what it is. It's right. Just saying it like it is. So, okay. So right at the end of that last segment, I rattled off a few names that were part of this, what I described as a train wreck of kind of a situation with the Dulce phenomena surrounding
Yeah.
around an alleged Dulce base. And one of the names I left out, I don't know if you could tell, I was trying to search. I knew I was leaving a name out, but John Lear was the name I was leaving out. So I don't know. You mentioned John Lear in terms of 1988, and that he was coming out with would you say he's the first one to describe aliens involved with Dulce, or is that before that? Because he's former CIA as well.
Yes, that's true. He is, of course, not the first one, but he had been in contact with Ann West, who now goes by Cherry Hinkle. But anyway, Ann West and John Lear had communicated, many times when the Dulce thing was coming up. And so, anyway, yes, John Lear is still a very significant personality when it comes to Dulce because he really, you know, made a tremendous impact on ufology, talking about Dulce when nobody was talking about it in 1988, except for him. And Bob Lazar wasn't even in the scenery yet until the following year in 1989. So,
Right.
yes, I think John Lear is a very significant personality, and I still don't know, even today, who he really is. But he has a tremendous knowledge of a Nevada test site. And sometimes I think that he's just pretending that he is a crazy person. Maybe he isn't. So it's very hard to say.
Right. It's tricky. So I, back in college before I got into this, I had a friend that was a civilian draftsman on Vandenberg Air Force Base, and he said that, hey Bret, when you come down south to see your relatives here in California, you got to stop by Goleta, where my buddy lived, and you got to see this document that someone gave me while I was working. And so this is the document right here. It's called Operation Majority. Have you ever seen that before?
I believe I had seen that document. In fact, the word Operation Majority was actually mentioned by William Cooper.
Okay.
Yeah, because until William Cooper came, many people, of course, mentioned magic or MIJIC or Operation Magi but not Operation Majority. In fact, Cooper was the first person, as far as I know, that started using Operation Majority
Okay.
terminology.
Well, so it's copyright. Well, I'll read the full title. It's Operation Majority Final Release. There will be no corrections made to this file. Copyright 1989 by Milton William Cooper, all rights reserved. Okay, and then there's supposedly a journalist, Tony Pelham, who's a witness to Bill Cooper making this affidavit of the information that follows. He's swearing to that. Well, on page 5, as you can see right down here, is supposedly the recopy of a press release by John Lear from December 29th, 1987. So that falls kind of right in with your timeline. You're saying, John Lear was coming out in 88. Um, but again, okay, so Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse is a book that really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that's going on with the government. So for someone to say that the government is lying or the government's telling the truth, I'm opting for the lying first, because it seems like they'll lie whenever it seems necessary to cover whatever secret projects that maybe Greg Valdez is talking about, or any alien stuff that X number of abductees have testified to, or military whistleblowers. I'm definitely thinking, okay, they're lying first, right? And so I've trusted Cooper quite a bit with that book, Behold the Pale Horse, because there's so much great information in there. He did some really impeccable research, but he's got Lear in his own affidavit. So is and then another facet for Cooper is I saw a video on your website where Cooper is saying there are no aliens. Okay. But yet in Behold a Pale Horse, he's describing several kinds of aliens that were supposedly a part of the treaty in 1954, the supposed Greada Treaty. So I'm a little confused. Or it seems like Cooper's making different statements at different times. Did he draw? I mean, it's fair for anyone to, with new information, to revise their opinion or conclusion. Is that what Cooper's doing? And then does he get duped by Lear inside here? Because Lear mentions a Dulce base inside this press release here.
Yes, of course, William Cooper was definitely influenced by John Lear. And, when William Cooper wrote that book, Behold a Pale Horse, which is basically a compilation of information that he obtained from various sources, including people like, John Lear and, Jordan Maxwell and
Sure.
you name it, all kinds of researchers contributed to creating in the mind of William Cooper this compilation of this book that he called Behold a Pale Horse. But by the time he published that book, he had already departed from ufology. And he realized that perhaps he himself may have been a victim of disinformation campaign by the government. So he came to the conclusion that he may have been given disinformation by the government, and he admitted it. And by 2001, he had completely disattached himself from ufology, and he created the word ufology
Huh,
to this
that's
whole
good.
study. But nevertheless, Behold a Pale Horse was a very, very fascinating book that included his main thesis, The Secret Government. That was the major speech that he gave for the first time in 1989 in Los Angeles. And he gave that speech in a meeting called there was a meeting of in Los Angeles at that time in 1989 called U-Forum.
Right.
And he gave that speech in U-Forum. And then in 1989, towards the end of 1989, he made a speech at Hollywood High School. And I was one of the many participants, to organize that lecture at Hollywood High School in 1989 to present William Cooper as the speaker. And, so in that speech in 1989, he mentioned about the secret government, and he mentioned even Dulce, part of that speech. He mentioned, I think he mentioned Dulce, and it was about, about a 25-minute speech. And he basically quoted from his thesis, The Secret Government, which was part of the Behold a Pale Horse book. And, in that book, which was basically a compilation of works by many other people, that book included a special section called about Zionism and
Right.
the elders, the protocols of the elders
Right.
of Zion. He included that piece of information, but later on, people started realizing that it was kind of a disinformative item. But "Behold a Pale Horse" was a tremendous hit and still is today. It's
Right.
one of the books that are one of the most popular in that's read by in people who are in prison in America, one of the most popular books even today. So, in 2001, I think Bill Cooper, he was killed in
Right.
in an incident in Arizona where he lived at that time. But that it's still he is one of the important personality in ufology, and well, it's connected to this Dulce base, allegation, and so I would say that he was important, no question about it. And I used to associate with him, and many people said that he had an obnoxious personality, and I agree with them that he did, because he also was suffering from alcoholism, and many times he was very short-tempered, and at one time he started fighting in a UFO meeting with a person by the name of Eric Beckyard, who wrote a book about Bigfoot. But anyway, it's a long history, but nevertheless, there are important personalities in this entire ufology. And you mentioned Bill Cooper, John Lear, and you name it. There's so many important personalities, and many of these personalities, it's difficult to, describe these personalities as whether they were authentic or they were pretending to be someone. But the impact of these personalities in ufology is undeniable. They impacted a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a train wreck because while I just said that it's hard to trust our government when it comes, especially when it comes to this kind of thing with UFOs, we know there's a cover up to some degree with UFOs. Plus, they also cover up their own secret projects as well, and maybe some of those projects have to do with aliens. Who's to? We can't really say. It seems like it's just a big matter of speculation. I would just say for myself, it wouldn't surprise me if it came to be true. Um, so okay, but here you have. Let me just paint a little picture for you. So on your website, you mentioned that Cherry Hinkle, aka Ann West, was on drugs and it was a con artist. Okay, that's one. Schneider, mental illness, and maybe made up the whole thing. Phil Schneider. Tal, aka Jason Bishop, supposedly had mental illness or mental issues. Benowitz, paranoia, which maybe part of that was instigated by the Air Force to try to discredit his information. Then you have Bruce Allen Walton, aka Branton, supposedly mental illness. So I mean, there's just one after the other, and it just seems to me it's like, I haven't checked these numbers, but to check that percentage of researchers involved with this, is that reflective of the percentage of mental illness people in society, or is this way above the curve? If you had to guess.
No, it's very difficult to determine if these are all part and parcel of the government spreading all kinds of information and misinformation and disinformation to muddy the waters. And in this field, there are many personalities that appear from time to time, and it's very difficult to distinguish who is authentic, really authentic, and has no agenda because even personalities such as George Knapp of Las Vegas K Plus TV,
Right.
you know, he may have agendas of for what reason I don't know, but you know, it's very difficult to trust in full these personalities because these personalities could be manipulated by indeed some kind of a covert governmental group that is trying to change the belief systems of the population little by little. And so this is where I stand. So on July 26th of this year, 2023, of course, everybody by now knows that there was a congressional hearing on UFOs. And, you know, one of the main personalities that appeared and were seated in that room in the congressional hearing was by the name of Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. These two, hand in hand, sat in the front seat of that congressional hearing. And so to me, it was really strange, you know, because I still don't know for sure what the agenda of George Knapp is, but many people in ufology treat him as the spokesperson of the this mystery of UFO phenomena, Area 51, and so on. And you know, so I'm glad that you, Bret, that you mentioned all these personalities because this is just part of the whole scenery of grand manipulation by somebody to alter the concept of the people little by little, maybe acclimatizing them for some eventual incident that may take place. Who knows? And so this is the present state of ufology. And, you know, we still don't know uh, any more than we knew about UFOs in 1947.
It's
When,
amazing.
yes, we have not made a single step towards the next step of ufology, even today. And but my belief is that someday in the future, I don't know when, maybe a few years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I am of the opinion that there will be some kind of direct disclosure from possibly whoever is manipulating this phenomenon. And that may include these entities themselves that will possibly disclose themselves and not the government. I believe that the government cannot disclose this phenomenon because the government does not know how to describe this phenomena to the public. And so I doubt that there is a cover up. Rather than a cover up, I believe that they are just silent because they cannot come out to the public and explain things in non-scientific terms. And so therein lies the reluctance of the US government. So I don't think that there's a intentional cover up, but just like Colonel John Alexander said one time that he doesn't believe that there's an intentional cover up. There is just absolute silence by the government on this strange phenomena. And, you know, that's where I stand right now.
Okay. So John Alexander, another controversial individual, I had a chance to meet him briefly once at the Bay Area UFO Expo back in 2006 or 7. I got the willies, let's just say that. And so do you think that the government has not made any treaties with the aliens, as many people allege? I mean, I've read some information that says that there's 4 or 5 treaties. If you pay attention to Dr. Michael Salla, He's saying all the governments in the world are making treaties like business deals, corporate business deals for technology in exchange for this or that or whatever. And then we'll talk about abductions as part of whatever. So what do you think? No, our government has not made any deals with
Well,
aliens, no agreements.
well, the basic thing is that this phenomenon seems to be real. There's no question in my mind. And these entities seem to be real in the sense that they could be interacting with people or the government without us really knowing about it, because these entities may not totally be absolutely physical in nature, but they could be some kind of a well, materialization, in our dimension, physical dimension, and are manipulating the government and everybody in the world, uh, and creating confusion. That's why I would like to say this thing, that people like David Grush, who testified in the congressional hearing, he
Right.
claimed that he had seen complete evidence of these entities, and that the government has been keeping in secret the physical evidences. But the big problem is that, he claims that he cannot reveal this because it's classified. But therein lies the, weirdness.
Yeah.
So who are we to really know? Because I think this matter is, everybody has a different interpretation of this thing, the reality. We still don't know for sure what reality really is. And so I keep an open mind. Maybe there are treaties like the so-called Eisenhower incident at
Yeah.
Edwards Air Force Base, I think in 1954 or something. And, and then there's also the alleged treaty that was between the Air Force and alien entities in 1964 at White Sands, at Holloman Air Force Base. So there are several stories that mention about treaties, but it's possible that these entities could have formed some kind of a treaty. But the question is, who are these entities? Are they really physical entities, or are they sentient intelligence that exist in this cosmos and occasionally materializing themselves and deceiving the people, as they are from advanced extraterrestrial civilization? Maybe this is a deception. We never know. And researchers like Jacques Vallée, keep saying that, this may not really be 100% physical object, and so on. And so I have always held Dr. Jacques Vallée in highest esteem, because he departed from the physical extraterrestrial origin of this phenomenon. But even people like Jacques Vallée is not perfect. In
Right.
one example is that recently, a few years ago, he wrote a book about the alleged crash of a flying saucer in New Mexico in 1945, known as the so-called Trinity UFO incident crash.
Right.
But the latest information seems to be that there were only about 3 or 4 actual witnesses to the San Antonio, New Mexico flying saucer crash of 1945. And recently, one of those people who close to that family, the Remy Baca, and all these witnesses came to the conclusion that this was a hoax. And so, you know, even researchers like Jack Valet and who wrote the book with Paola Harris,
Paula Harris, right?
yes, they may have been duped. Uh, and who knows, you know, whether what the truth is, because even the San Antonio, New Mexico alleged flying saucer crash of 1945, there's no physical evidence. It's just that verbal affirmation by only 3 or 4 people. So this is the thing, you know, we have to be very careful. It could be true, but it could be a false incident. You never know.
Right. You know, I've been a fan of Jacques Vallée's books. I've read all his books, Passport to Magonia, you know. Um, so, but just to show you, to buttress your point about how muddled the water is here, George C. Andrews wrote the book Extraterrestrial Friends or Foes, and says it was Hynek and Jacques Vallée that actually stopped our government from disclosing to the UN about the reality of the or UFOs and where they're from. So, you know, just nobody's perfect, right? Just like you said. I would like to think that Jacques Vallée is a good person, that maybe he honestly got duped, like you're saying, because that could happen to any of us, right? Nobody's perfect. Human beings can be fooled really easily. So I know I've been fooled before in my life and various things. So I can't be casting stones at someone getting fooled, as long as they're doing honest work and are sincere about what they do. But then when someone like George Andrews comes along and says, well, he helped block the disclosure back in the early 60s, I think it was. I have to go back and look at my notes, but it just makes you stop and pause and think, okay, I'm a human being, I'm on Earth, yet I cannot tell, like you just said a minute ago, what the reality is. Not only just reality in general, mathematicians try to explain it, philosophers, shaman, whatever, priests, but we can't tell. There's many different versions, but they certainly can't tell what's going on with UFOs. What are we supposed to do with this information then? Just sit back and let it happen? Should we stop investigating it? Or are we going to get to a point where, I mean, certainly, you're saying the government's going to come forward at some time, maybe with some kind of disclosure. I certainly don't want to wait for that. You know, I'm going to be twice your age, I think, by the time they actually tell us the truth. So what does a human being do in a situation like this? Seems helpless.
Well, I think this is a matter of individual, individual thing, you know, because
Spiritual.
every individual, unfortunately, lives in his own reality, and I cannot live in another person's reality, because that's maybe different. So you know, and so every individual on this earth has his own or her own interpretation of what reality is. So, you know, go back again with the Dulce situation. You know, what happened, very interesting incident happened in the late 1960s, somewhere around 1969. I think I mentioned this before. But there was an incident where about 20 school children were riding a bus from Dulce to go to a parochial school right next to Dulce in a town called Lumberton. And on this day, early around 6:30 in the morning, the school bus that was carrying about 20 school kids was, the driver was driving the bus and on Highway 64 from Dulce to Lumberton, which is only about 10 minutes or 15 minutes away. Suddenly, from the Archuleta Mesa area, a dull metallic round object started appearing from that Archuleta Mesa and crossed over Highway 64 over the bus. And the entire school kids in that bus saw that incident. And the bus driver was so shocked about what he saw that instead of stopping, he pushed the pedal on the gas and he sped. And in the meantime, the kids were all screaming, "It's a flying saucer! It's a flying saucer!" And personally, I don't think these school children were lying. There's no way that these school children were lying.
Altogether, right?
Yes, because, by the way, one of those school children was a man by the name of Edwin Gomez, who was one of the sons of the Gomez Ranch,
Right.
who later became the owner of the Gomez Ranch himself. But the Edmund Gomez was just a kid at that time. He was in the bus, and he claims even today that that was a real incident. A dull metallic object crossed over Highway 64, and everybody saw it. And so, who is to deny that incident? I mean, I think it was a real incident, and so it's hard for me to say that this was a hoax. No, I don't think it was a hoax. Just as what happened in 1994 in Africa, in Zimbabwe,
Right.
where 60 or 70 school children had witnessed a strange object land in the schoolyard, and witnessed that thing, and they witnessed an entity that came out of that object and tried to interact with the kids. And so I don't think they were lying. They did see something. So this is one of the whole mystery about this phenomenon, that it's real to those who observed it. It's real. So that's my position. Going back to this theory again, that some people are meant to see this phenomena physically. They're meant to see it, but some other people maybe not are meant to see these things.
Right.
And in one of my articles, I talk about the strange incident in 1917 that happened in Fatima, Portugal, where 20,000 people had assembled on October 13th of 1917, I'm sorry, in Fatima, because a shepherd girl was contacted by an entity in white, dressed in white, that on October 13th, 1917, she will cause a miracle in the sky over Fatima. And indeed, there were about 20,000 people that assembled to see this miracle. And among those, the crowd were journalists and some photographers. And yet, there's not even one single photograph of that event. Not everybody in the 20,000 people saw that thing in the sky, but hundreds of people claim to have seen it. So, but yet there's no photograph. There were photographers present, but this seems to me that for some strange reason, the phenomenon doesn't seem to want to be photographed with clarity of this phenomenon itself. And the same thing can be said of the amazing Farmington, New Mexico incident of 1950, in which hundreds of residents of Farmington had seen for 1 hour, for 3 days in a row, 1 hour each time, between 11 a.m. and noon. They had witnessed hundreds of metallic flying saucers doing maneuvering of all kinds over the skies of Farmington. And I mean, this was one of the most amazing incidents I ever heard. And I had not even heard of this incident until I came to New Mexico in 2008 from California. And actually, in 2010, I visited the Farmington Senior Center to find the possible witnesses to this incident. of 1950. And indeed, I did encounter a witness, direct witness to this incident, and he told me exactly the same thing as was described by the Farmington Daily Times newspaper article of March 18th of 1950. And so, but yet nobody has come up with any photograph of this aerial phenomenon that lasted for 1 hour for 3 consecutive days. And this is the thing that fascinates me. Why no photographs? So sometimes I think that this phenomenon, for some reason or other, doesn't want itself to be photographed with clarity, if at all.
Well, okay, so some of the best pictures supposedly are the Billy Meyer case. Is that a hoax?
Well, it's possible that it could be a hoax, but that this Billy Meyer incident is some way similar to an incident that took place in Florida many years ago, and in which a person claimed to have taken a clear picture of the flying saucer, but they found models of flying saucers in his house,
Right.
but yet some other people say that even though he may have had models in his house, maybe the actual photographs happen to be real.
Right.
So, this is the same case with the Billy Meyer case.
Right.
Yeah, maybe Billy Meyer may have had some models of flying saucers in his house, but yet who is to say that at the same time, who is to say that he did not take an actual photo of these objects, which were clear, and his photos were clear. So this is a very difficult thing to prove or disprove,
Right.
let's talk about George Adamski. His
Sure. We got
photographs were
we got 2
amazing.
minutes. Let's talk about George
His
Adamski.
photographs were amazing, but it may have been what this phenomenon itself wanted him to impress, that they were real physical objects. So basically, Bret, my conclusion is that we don't have the answer to this weirdness, and but I'm so glad that people like you and I are still interested in these things, because this is, if we understand this phenomenon, we'll understand why we're living in this mysterious world.
You're right. I agree 100%. It's going to shed light on who we are as human beings and why we're here. It's a spiritual thing, and I think a lot of people are stuck on the nuts and bolts of things. And I a long time ago I said the spiritual aspect is really the only thing that makes sense. So okay, really quickly, what's the title of your book?
Well, actually, I don't have a book that was published,
Okay.
but recently a couple of gentlemen created a movie called The Conspiratologist.
Okay.
Yes, it's a great 30-minute
It
documentary
is.
film. It's called The Conspiratologist, in which I appear as a conspiratologist, which is different from a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Yes, and I'm interested in the philosophy of why conspiracy theories are becoming popular.
Okay, we're going to do a little description at the end. Thank you very much for your time, and I would love to have you on again at some point.
Thank you, Bret, so much. You have been a tremendous host, and God bless you and your audience.
God bless you too, brother. All right, I'll be in touch. Thank you.